Hey, how's it going? I wanted to make a video talking about my forest game as it's coming up on 1 year since it's been released. It was a project that was done for my university, and at the time I didn't make a video for it, but looking back on it, 1 year since it's been released, it had a more interesting development process than some of my more recent titles, so I thought it'd be something that would be interesting to talk about. So when starting the 1 year program, I knew at the end of that year you would have to have this like really cool project that kind of like accumulates all the little things you learned and is like a little more profound. But when starting and going into it, I didn't really have any ideas of like a dream game or like a really deep story concept that like resonated with me that I wanted to do. I just really wanted to learn more about like game development in general because that prior year I was like learning or keep dipping my toes into Unity with like some small projects that I've done. Using like Skillshare links or something like that, but they're really small like tutorial projects. Like one was like a race car one, and another one was like almost like a little puzzle move and get to the end type of puzzle game. And that summer I spent using Unity some more and like trying to like code really small like demos or like really small like arcade type games, like recreating Pac-Man and stuff. And I talk about this in another video where I go back over my old projects. But yeah, that was the summer for me, and that was the extent of my knowledge. It wasn't anything deeper than like I think the most I did was like a platformer, it was a 2D platformer, but I like learned a little bit, so I got like the movement and like some very basic enemies, but like you would have issues where you would like clip through platforms and stuff and like clip through walls. So I want to learn like take that like little demo and like add on to it, but nothing deeper than that. So going into this, I didn't really have like a story idea or anything to create a game with. And for one of my classes in the program, our final project was to create a platform that was based on a public domain franchise in the Corgi engine. And I didn't really have any ideas, so I was like looking up different public domain franchise. And the one that like kind of stuck out to me was Tarzan. That was because like I could correlate it to like a lot of the mechanics and ideas that were used in like Donkey Kong for like the vine swinging and the rope traversal, and then other stuff like different mechanicals where you like pick like Donkey Kong, you pick stuff up and throw. I thought like Tarzan, you could do that with like rocks and stuff. And then like more advanced like mechanics or platforming mechanics that like Donkey Kong or other platformers do, I thought could like be applied to Tarzan with like how you can like climb up stuff or like maybe wall jump. So that was the idea that stuck with me, and it was the idea I ended up going with, and I ended up using those different mechanics. And I was new to Corgi Engine at the time, but implementing a lot of those ideas were pretty easy for the most part. So I was able to, when you create a character, it gives you like a list of stuff. So wall jump was one of them, and there was like a ladder thing, so you can like make different ladders. Some of the ideas that I had were like a little more complicated, or at least at the time, because I was relatively new, was the idea of trying to like pick stuff up and throw it. I ended up doing it with like attaching like a little thing to the character, like a box collider, like a transform where the rock would go when you pick it up and then throw it. Looking back at it now at the project, I'm not sure if that was the most effective. I might be able to do it now a little better because I've been using Corgi Engine a lot more. So a lot of the ideas that I tried to do then and didn't work, honestly ended up going in my new project. So I ended up like water as an idea I wanted to do, but I couldn't figure it out in time. So now I do it with like water. You do like the surface modifier. So maybe it's the same for the, what's it called? The rocks. But at the time I was able to do it like that. And one of the issues I ended up having was the rock, once you threw it and like it respawned, I had difficulty getting it to like reattach. So I ended up putting more rocks. And yeah, so those were the different mechanics that I added, and I tried to draft a level. The process for drafting the level for me was, because I really had no idea how to do it, I just kind of, for my 2D platform over the summer, I just kind of like made stuff and then try to put it in the level as I was like making it. So it was very like on the fly type thing. So like whatever I can get working, I would put in the level and design around it instead of like the inverse. And for this one, I'd ended up designing like, or looking up, I referred to Donkey Kong again, specifically Donkey Kong Country and how they designed their levels. So in the ones that I saw that they had, like it was an article where they mentioned that they use like a bunch of sticky notes or they sketch out the different levels and different portions of the levels and how it would go. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So I ended up using sticky notes. Looking back at it, sticky notes ended up being not bad, but like not the best way to do it because, well, at least my sticky notes, they would always like the back, the sticky part would get like messed up. So I'd end up losing the sticky notes. So that's why now I do it still using paper. I use like a lined piece of paper and I divide it in sections. So each like part of the section is like a part of the level. But yeah, so that's what I ended up doing later on. Even in that game, I ended up, when I realized that the sticky notes weren't like staying that much, I ended up just drawing it on a piece of paper. But yeah, that was mainly the level design process. I try to design it where like a lot of like interesting secrets or stuff would be like collectibles. So I did it like the beginning. There's like a wall, so you can like wall jump up to get like different like platforms or different like collectibles that were like more points. And later on, using like the rock throwing thing, you can go in a cave, and then in the cave, you'd be able to like collect a bunch of fruits and stuff that you wouldn't be able to. So I try to add some more mini games. I wanted to originally add a couple more mini games, but due to time constraints and that type of stuff, I was only able to add one of the many ones that I wanted to do. I wanted like one where you like throw rocks at like platforms to get like a bunch of stuff. But yeah, that didn't end up happening for this version of the game. But yeah, so there was the main level, and then when designing the art and characters for it, I really wasn't an artist at the time either. I didn't know how to make too many assets. So I went with the way that I thought was like the most like effective or easy so I can get it done. And that was to make like silhouettes. So I originally wanted to be like a bunch of silhouettes for characters, for platforms and stuff. So then don't have to detail them. I could just like shade them in black, and then the background I would do for like some sort of art. So for this one, I ended up doing like in Photoshop, doing like a bunch of different like pictures for the background art, and they'd be like green, and they had like this brush in a pack that I found that was like pretty cool. It made like a smoky effect. So that's what I ended up going with. And this part's actually important for later on. So that was the platformer. I made it. The level was working pretty good. I had like different vines and stuff and two different characters. It was like a monkey character that would walk and then jump, and then like a bird character that would just fly. So that's what we did for that. And then that level ended up coming through. One of the more difficult challenges I had was I wanted to create these cool platforms. So instead of just square ones, I wanted them to have like different shapes and stuff. So it's like almost like you're coming to life with the jungle theme of like Tarzan to fit that. But those ended up being a little more difficult because with anything, you had to make, instead of just a box collider, which is like a box, you had to do it like with a polygonal collider. So each one had to be like kind of sketched out. And with Corgi, and I imagine all of them, they're at like a certain angles, the character has difficulty and starts like sliding down. So he's not going up it correctly. So that was like, at least for this project, I could get away with it a little bit, but later on, it ended up being a little bit difficult because I always had to like readjust that. So that was one of the more challenging parts. And then just figuring out some of the stuff. So it was like my first time figuring out like the AI characters. So that took a little bit of time to figure out how to get them to move or get them to like work, especially with the bird characters, because those ones are the flying. So I always had the issue where once you kill them and then you respawned, it would like kind of jitter and not fly too much. So that was something I had to like figure out as well. But yeah, a lot of that was getting introduced to the Corgi engine, and I'm a lot better with it now. But I'm really happy because a lot of those concepts that I learned applied to like my new projects, like how I develop and how I create, and even using the Corgi engine is all stuff that started with this one. So at the end of the semester in that class, I handed in I submitted the project. It was online. So I did that, and then because it was a 1-year program I was doing. The second year, I was supposed to have my big project done, and I had to meet with the professors to kind of discuss and decide where to go. And I still didn't have an idea for a project because I spent a lot of time doing this Tarzan game, but I didn't really have a story concept for Tarzan or anything like profound or deep or anything, like my own take on Tarzan. because I don't even think I've watched, like, I know like the idea of Tarzan, but I've never watched like the movies or the books or anything really. So I didn't have any idea. But when going into the meeting with them, I just had the idea maybe I make a couple more levels or do like some new mechanics or something like that. Maybe beef up the art because I was taking art class that next semester. So like, oh, maybe I can learn some arts and add that to make it more or animations or something. But they wanted me to add like a story. I didn't have a story, but one of them noticed that the background I made, that like cool smoky thing, I made it because it was cool. But they thought of the idea of, oh, that could be used for like deforestation. You can like add that idea and concept and make the game around that kind of. And I thought it was pretty good because the background was already made. I could just like beef up the art to like kind of fit the theme more and like rework the game towards the theme. So I thought it was a really good idea. So that break I ended up spending like researching. I watched like a couple movies and like around the theme of deforestation, how they tackle it. Then I ended up reading like some papers and some books that were centered around the concept. And at the start of the second semester, the spring season, I ended up coming up with like ideas for that or like little drafts. And at the time, I was also taking a storytelling class. So that ended up helping. And the 2D art class that I mentioned helped a lot because a lot of the stuff that I wanted to do or had to do for the game ended up coming from that class. So it ended up coming together really good. Like, for example, one of the weeks we had to create like a character. So I ended up creating the character Oslac, and the way they taught the character creation was pretty cool because you had to come up with like some traits and then add that to the character. So that's where the character comes from. He comes from those traits, and it gives them like the jacket and stuff and the backpack and giving him details. And even the creation of the character used in Illustrator. That's where I got that from. We took like a week to learn like Illustrator things, and that's where I did the Illustrator, and it was pretty good. I got to do a lot of things. We did like background work one day, 1 week in that class, so I got to like implement or try to create different backgrounds. And yeah, so going on more of the story concept, the story process was pretty interesting. I ended up deciding to go for trying to make like as you replay the level over a couple iterations that the level would change like in color scope or in different things being affected, like the trees would get cut down, there would be less animals, there'd be less fruits, and it'd be more like modernization. So it'd be transforming the forest into like kind of like forest conversion into like a city or like a little town at the end. And that one I wanted to do because I thought it would be like an easy way to, what's it called, rework the level. And because I had the problem with the level with like the different shapes, I thought it'd be a new way to like do it without trying to create new like different areas or different like things, because that took me a long time to create the one level, so I didn't know if I would have time to create four or like a couple levels. So that was like a good like kind of cop out for me. And that one I ended up doing at the time I didn't know how to do, what's it called, the arts that I kind of do now, where I like hue shift a lot of things. I like drew everything out like individually. So I did the first one, which was I decided to do like a lot of green and like very vibrant colors for the first level. And then I started to pick different colors that like kind of shifted more towards like a really dark gray. And like I took inspiration from like almost like horror movies and those types of like scenes where you're in the forest. It's like kind of spooky and like ominous. So I really try to like create that for the last level, like that type of environment. And then at the end, it's like a little town and like different people walking. So that was the idea, to like kind of shift and like literal like little bits at each time to that type of theme. And then more on the like informational side, because it's not just a visual story, I had to create like more of like a teaching thing to like teach people about like deforestation in kind of a way. That I did like more information. So the characters I created, I try to fit them a little bit more to the theme of deforestation, in particular the Amazon rainforest. So that's where I came up with the monkey. I looked up and it was like the gold lion tamarin that's affected by deforestation. And I looked up information about him, and then I made like a little bird. I forget the bird's name off the top of my head, but that one I try to fit to like ones that are in the Amazon, and the collectibles, which were originally just oranges, oranges, apples, and bananas, I want to say, that I switched to those ones. But then the special one would be like different plants that are found within the region. And I try to add different elements as well, like once you beat the level that kind of fit it. So in the pause menu, I added this like informational panel, which in the first level, it would start off completely empty. There would be like not, because you're exploring, you're like researching as you go on. And then as you keep like going back to the level and playing it through at the end, when you hit the pause menu, there'd be like all these informations about that fill up. So there'd be like stuff about the monkey and like a little blurb about him, then about the bird and a little blurb. So that's something I wanted to add. And then by the end, when you're like done with the game, there's like everything's filled up, so you get to read about each one, and there's like one different page for like different ones. And then at the very end, so like once you beat it, there's like a new menu, and there's like a data one, and you can go in and there'd be like all the information in that one little place. So I thought that was pretty interesting to get that informational blurb. And also at the very end of the game, like once you're done with the game and you see that the forest has been like converted into the town, then I give like a full blurb about like deforestation, what it causes and different things and how it affects it. So that part's the more informational one. And that one I did by just like researching a bunch, trying to get like a bunch of information and sources, and then putting that information like a nice little package. So it was pretty interesting. I really liked doing that stuff. It was something very different for me, very new, because the project started off as like this Tarzan game, like almost a platformer, and I came with like the ideas of just trying to create like a level with different mechanics like I've done for my other projects. And even for these ones, this kind of had to do with these little games that I do now, like the Caterpillar Adventure, the Geo game, and the Game Jam games. It's just trying to create different levels and implementing different mechanics. But with this one, I started off doing that, and then as I like got more developed, I got to add more story and try to like rework things around the story. So it was pretty interesting. Story, I still believe, is not like my best or like my favorite concept of like game development, or the one I think I do the best. So I still try to tend to sway more towards like level design and different mechanics and implementing them. But it is something that I do think is pretty interesting to add different stories, and something that I do want to try to like implement in like the future projects, like the Caterpillar Adventure. I'm trying to add like a little bit of story to it now, and other projects I kind of want to do more story stuff. This project, I was thinking at the time when I finished it, I like handed it in, and it was kind of cool. I got to go to a game convention, like a very small one where I live, and then present it in like a pitch competition. So it was pretty cool. I got to have people play it, give me feedback, and feedback's actually really important and helpful, because from that feedback, because when you're developing like a lot, or at least for me, I get like used to the game, so I like master it by the end. And there's some things that I don't like think of. I'm like, oh, this is like intuitive. And then when you see people play it, and it's like kind of like some things that you thought was like intuitive, like one was wall jumping. So the wall jump is you like attach to the wall, and then you can jump off and like kind of reattach yourself, so you can like get up platforms pretty easy. But that process wasn't very intuitive because it wasn't explained. There wasn't like, I try to go for like the Mario approach, where it's just like you explain by playing kinda, but not by like actual like instructions. So after seeing that, and like a couple people were struggling with it, that night I went home and I tried to craft like a tutorial, and I like wrote out instructions like how to do it in like an area where you like there was no way you could die, so you can like just go and like practice this. So then when you get to the real level, it's about like figuring that stuff out. And I thought it was important because when the game converted from the Tarzan game to the other style of game, it was really more about getting like the message and the information across, rather than like creating this cool or like these tough levels. Because if you create it like really tough, then how are you going to get to the end or like even get the information? So that was something that I like learned and I took away, and it ended up helping because I like now, even now, I try to like implement different tutorials or different ways of explaining the mechanics and how to play things. So a lot of that type of stuff kind of helped me, and is something I take into projects. This is a project that I'm not sure if I would go back to, or at least at the moment, I don't have plans to go back to add. But maybe in the future, when go revisiting and looking back at the footage, it's like kind of interesting because you get to see like the different things. It's like really cool, like a lot of the arts that I like did and stuff, and even some things like the rock mechanics is something that maybe I would want to change, or like I could do better now maybe. So that type of stuff might be interesting for me to maybe go back to one day, and maybe I will. But for now, I'm pretty happy with how the game went. It taught me a lot of different things. It was a really interesting project I got to do. So yeah, that's about it. It was really nice to go back and look back at the Forest game, and I'm really happy. It's been 1 year since it's been developed, and I got to release it. And yeah,